All right, Jeff, it's almost Father's Day this weekend. What goes better with Father's Day than baseball? So let's bring on journalist and author Dan Schlossberg, who has a book out that we can tell him about too that you can get for Father's Day. Dan, thanks for coming back on with us.
Great to be back on with you, Jason and Jeff.
We enjoyed our conversation about your Hank Aaron book so much last time and have since gone on to talk additional Negro League conversation. I'm actually curious as we start because the Negro League numbers being integrated happened after our interview. So I'm curious your thoughts on, given everything you talked about how much Hank Aaron struggled and didn't get recognition. What are your thoughts on baseball finally integrating the stats from the Negro Leagues?
It's a good choice of words, integrated. Very, very well put, actually. But my thoughts are that baseball made a mistake, a big mistake. And the reason is because you cannot take the stats from any leagues where the records were either lost or poorly covered. Newspapers that covered the Negro Leagues, like the Chicago Defender, went out of business. The records of the Negro Leagues were just lost, basically. And it's hard to compare. Let's put it this way: Babe Ruth never faced a great black pitchers, and Jackie Robinson never faced a great white pitchers. So it's just impossible to do it. However, if you look up the record, look up baseballreference.com, look up Josh Gibson's record. He never hit more than 20 home runs in a season, according to the integrated statistics. Well, that can't be. Thanks to Baseball Reference, they did a 162 game average that showed that he averaged 45 home runs a year. How could he average 45 home runs a year and never hit more than 20 in a season? As Yogi Berra would say, something's not kosher in the state of Denmark.
So talk to us about that. If integration is questionable in your mind with the numbers, is the recognition important of what these players did, given the recognition that Hank did not get while he was playing in the big leagues?
The recognition is critically important, and that's why we have the Baseball Hall of Fame. Many of the best stars of the Negro Leagues are in the Baseball Hall of Fame. But getting back to this issue of MLB using the records, SABR, Society for American Baseball Research, just came out with a report that said there were a whole bunch of leagues, black leagues, after 1948, which was MLB's deadline, that should have qualified as major leagues. In fact, all of Hank Aaron's home runs in the Negro Leagues, he had 5, didn't count because they came out to 1948. Well, how do you draw this arbitrary timeline? I just think they made a mistake trying to do this. I know what they're trying to do, but you cannot research something that's not there. You cannot justify something that's not there. It was lost. It's a shame. It's too bad, but that's why we have the Hall of Fame.
Well, that does seem a shame. It's a shame that see. I think that there is more value in integrating these numbers and including them than not. But I understand what you're saying, and it actually might be doing a disservice to some of the players in the Negro Leagues because the statistics were not kept as well. That their statistics are actually better than what is going to be recorded by integrating them because, as you say, the statistics weren't kept the way that they should have been.
Satchel Paige is a great case in point. He claimed that he pitched 2,500 games and 100 no hitters. If you look up his integrated record, there's nothing that says that. So he obviously pitched more no hitters than Nolan Ryan, but how many were in exhibition games or in pickup games? Sometimes these Negro League guys would play a triple header, maybe one scheduled game and 2 pickup games against a factory team. So that's just the way it was. They would do anything to make a living. And that's why they played all these exhibition games. But Satchel Paige, 100 no hitters? I don't know. That's not what the record says.
Unfortunately we can't ask Hank Aaron what he would have thought of what Major League Baseball did. You knew him well enough that maybe you can tell us what you think based on what you knew about Hank Aaron, how he would feel about this.
He was greatly discriminated against. In fact, it happened early and late in his career. Early in his career, when he was in the minor leagues, the Braves sent him down to Jacksonville in the South Atlantic League, also called the Sally League. It was an all-white league. He and Felix Mantilla and one other black player went down to integrate this league. They put up with a lot of abuse everywhere they went. In fact, I once asked Hank, I said, was there any city that you enjoyed going to, or were they all bad? He said they were all bad. Every city in the league, including his home Jacksonville city. So that was just the way it was, unfortunately, in 1953. But he spoke with his bat. He was the MVP in that league, most valuable player in that league. The next year, he was in the major leagues. So Hank Aaron went through a lot. And then later in his career, as he approached Babe Ruth's record, there are a lot of bigots out there who didn't want to see a black man go after a white man's hallowed record. And they threatened his family. They threatened Aaron's life. That's why his kids were not present when he hit number 715. You see his wife there. You see his parents there. His kids were with their biological mother in Jacksonville watching on television because of the threats against Aaron's life. In fact, Aaron told Dusty Baker and Ralph Garr, two young black outfielders on the Braves at that time, not to sit next to him on the bench in case somebody shoots him during the game.
It's that
This is what he had to live with.
It's that story, which we talked about last time, that has stuck with me watching baseball now and watching how close all the players are in the dugout and the celebrations they have, and just how he had the opposite. He encouraged people to stay away from him for their own safety, let alone his. I just can't imagine what it was like to go to work every day telling people, don't come near me for you.
And on the road, he had to stay in separate accommodations from the team, had to eat in separate restaurants. Some nights he just slept at the Braves ballpark when they were home. And the reason was he got all this hate mail. In 1973 alone, he got 930,000 pieces of mail. Not all of it was hate mail by any means, but a lot of it was. Dusty Baker said he would just throw it on the floor in the clubhouse so the other black players could pick it up and read it. This is what Hank Aaron was up against. Babe Ruth never had something like that when he was going for 714.
So we don't have that today facing baseball near as much, but we do have other threats to players and other problems that baseball's facing. And I had sent Jeff a story earlier about baseball players that are being threatened over gambling now. And you're somebody who has watched this game. You are a historian. You've covered it for decades now. We saw 5 players suspended last week for gambling. I mean, they basically threw away their career over losing a couple $100s. Can you talk about the impact that you're seeing as somebody who's watched this game that gambling is having on it now? We had the Pete Rose time. We've had other players. You don't gamble on games. But now they tell you don't gamble on games while it's sponsored by FanDuel or ESPN Bet. So can you talk about gambling in baseball?
Jason, I'm glad you brought that question up because very few people have talked about it. Years ago, Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle were greeters at an Atlantic City casino. They were suspended from baseball by Bowie Kuhn because of their association with gambling. That was tame compared to what's going on today, where you read on all the websites what the odds are, what FanDuel says, there's so many different ones. And if baseball is in bed with gambling, which it is to raise more revenue to cover payroll, how do you discipline the players not to bet on baseball? They are allowed to bet on other sports. The first thing you see in the clubhouse, when you walk in the clubhouse, the first thing you see is a sign that says gambling on baseball is not permitted. Actually, what that means is gambling on your own team is not permitted. And what did Pete Rose do? He was a manager of the Cincinnati Reds. His team during his 5-year tenure finished second every time. It probably should have finished first once or twice. I'm willing to bet, and I don't know this for a fact, I'm willing to bet he bet against his own team, knowing he can make the Reds lose. A manager can't make a team win, but he can make a team lose. And if money is that dear to him, that important to him, why would he not do that? And he never really admitted exactly what he did. He never really apologized for what he did. Had he done that, he would have been in the Baseball Hall of Fame years ago.
Well, not only that, he wrote, I believe, 2 books, one saying he didn't and one saying he did. So he finds ways to capitalize no matter what the truth is.
He wanted to sell more books.
Yeah. And to your point, just so people understand, you don't have to bet against your team for it to be bad. There are people that say, well, as long as you bet on your own team, what's the big deal? Well, no, if you only bet on certain games, to win, but then don't bet on other games, it could have the same impact because people then know, wait a second, why is the manager or the player betting on their team to win only sometimes but not other times? So when people say that, it always baffles me because there are ways that you can gamble without necessarily showing your hand. And to me, the concern is with baseball, as Jason started talking about, is you've now opened this can of worms. All sports have now opened this can of worms. I don't think anybody actually anticipated some of the things that are now coming out, which isn't just that the players are gambling, but players and coaches and members of teams are being harassed and threatened because they're not getting a hit here or there, and they're not doing this because these people are gambling. Is there a way to stop it?
I would hope so. Personally speaking, I mean, I watch MLB Network a lot. What I resent probably the most about MLB Network is watching all the odds that are posted for every single game. I'm not a gambler. I don't care about the odds. I care about the winning and losing pitcher, who hit home runs, what the standings are, who's going for MVP, Rookie of the Year, Cy Young Award. That I care about. The gambling, I could care less about it. If MLB Network would get rid of it, that would be great. However, FanDuel and others are sponsors of MLB Network. They can't get rid of it. They're in bed with gambling. It's too bad.
Well, they've got two problems there in terms of their network and their television stuff. They're funded more by gambling in terms of the advertising side of the revenue, and then on their distribution side of the revenue, they've got a lot of these networks that are in bankruptcy. So they've got markets where they can't even see the games because either the local service is in bankruptcy or they're fighting with a cable company. So baseball's got a squeeze going on from both sides. They can talk about the product on the field and we can get to the changes and the rules and stuff. But off the field, they're trying to grow their base. Jeff and I talk about this all the time because I gambled in a prior life and quit. Jeff does not like gambling. And so I have a little more of a palate for it in what I'm watching. He has none. But I think that these leagues, rather than pushing the personalities of the players that they have, they're pushing to get them hooked on the excitement of having some money on the game. And so then you get into they have to watch it on TV because they've got money on the game, as opposed to they can just follow their players. So I think you kind of have like one or the other kind of coming first year that are converging a little bit.
Now, one thing we should mention is Shohei Ohtani. This is a bigger deal than baseball is letting on. He is the golden child of Major League Baseball. Nothing can harm him, according to the commissioner's office. However, this gambling scandal, how can anybody borrow or steal even $16 million from a close friend the way his interpreter is charged with doing? Something is not right with that. My gut tells me, and I can't substantiate this, what if Shohei paid off his interpreter to take the fall?
Well,
Just a thought.
Jeff
Well,
kept asking that on the show. How did the accountant not know? How did the lawyers not know? Like separate for like it's one thing to say you logged into your friend's account and stole his information. It's another thing to have all the professionals that he pays for all the money that he makes not realize that there's money being siphoned out and missing.
Yeah, very true. And by the way, when I talk about Hank Aaron, I always say he's first in clean home runs, meaning no
Mhm,
cheating, no
right.
steroids, also no gambling. He was one of the most honest, had more integrity, just an incredible player, humble man, an introverted man. There's no way that he would have put up with gambling. If he had seen that in the Braves clubhouse, it would have been exposed instantly.
Jeff, why don't you go ahead?
So yeah, I just want to talk about Shohei Ohtani for another minute. It is
Sure.
in just the larger context. Well, first of all, in the smaller context, it makes no sense some of the things that have come out. There are governors in place when large sums of money are to be taken out of an account. Having your interpreter call and say, "Hey, by the way, wire a couple $1 million here or there," is not something that normally happens. The fact that this went away so quickly because the interpreter is going to jail Does that mean now that this investigation is actually closed, or does it mean that the investigation is still going on under the current to make sure that nothing comes out later on? Because to me, the worst thing that baseball or anybody can ever do is cover something up. The best thing to do is just come forward and come clean. If they sweep this under the rug, and somebody like you then uncovers it and writes a story on it, it is a much worse situation, especially when it's a gambling issue in baseball.
I totally agree. MLB, when they suspended these 5 other guys, including one guy for life, they announced that Shohei is cleared and that investigation is closed. Maybe that's what the commissioner's office says, but the feds have not said that. I believe their investigation is ongoing. We'll see. We have not heard the end of this. It's too big of a deal. $16 million? That's too big of a deal.
Well, and it's larger than just Shohei and his friend. It's the bookie. And the bookie is what has been the catalyst to take him and other people down. So it's a question of who else tells tales about who else is involved around this. You had, I think it was another one of Shohei's teammates who got suspended for gambling as well.
David Fletcher was in AAA.
Yeah. So I did want to ask, you're somebody who watches a lot of baseball. Jeff and I have debated rules forever. He loved when they did the shift. I hate the ghost runner.
No, I didn't love the shift. I love banning the shift. There's a difference.
Yeah, sorry. I should clarify. He loved banning the shift. He has complained about the shift for years. I hate the ghost runner.
I agree with both of you. You're both right.
We both kind of enjoy.
That never happens, by the way. We're not both right.
Normally, one of us is definitely wrong. Oftentimes, me. Where are you on the new rules? We kind of like the shorter game. Might be a little bit faster than some people would prefer. But how do you feel about the changes that baseball has made so far?
Some are good and some are awful. Let's talk about what I call the Manfred Man, being the automatic runner. You know who Manfred Mann is, right? I'm sure you do.
Blinded by the light.
There you go. This is the most idiotic, disgraceful, embarrassing, abominable rule in baseball history. Without question, Rob Manfred should be shown the door right now. And if it's such a great rule, Rob, how come you don't use it in the postseason? Because it sucks.
By the way, Jason, that's what it looks like not to sit on the fence.
That may be the best quote we've gotten on the show in all of our years doing. And you're right. I mean, it just drives me absolutely crazy. All of a sudden, like, you could have nothing going on in the base path all game, and you get to the ninth inning, and it's like, okay, if you don't do it here in the 10th inning, you're gonna have base runner out there. Good luck. And it's like, just move him over, get him in.
One sec.
I'll cut this out, Jeff.
I had to close my window because my landscaper decided this was a great time to do the yard.
It's always good. Yeah, it always works out that way.
That's what drives me nuts, though. It's so arbitrary. Like, hey, let's try to make the game faster by throwing a runner out there. Like, if you want to speed up the game and have a pitch clock and things like that, you're working within the pace of play of the game. It just seems so random that they decided that was something that would be a good rule.
And it's about to get worse.
Why?
Because do you know how they're going to, if the All-Star game happens to go into extra innings, they're not using the ghost runner. They're going to have a home run derby to decide the All-Star game.
Yeah, but that's the All-Star game. I mean, look, at this point,
it should have integrity. The All-Star game needs integrity.
I am on your side. This is Jason will call this a get off my lawn issue, but the fact is the All-Star game is an exhibition. So yes, it would be great if we could all go back to our child. No, it would be great if we could all go back to our childhood and have the All-Star game where it mattered, where people busted their butts and it meant something to win it just out of pride. Then that would be great. We're not going back to that for the All-Star game. Yes, we should, but we're not. And in
fact, the All-Star game has so many things wrong with it. I don't even know where to begin. Number one, it should be a day game on the weekend, as it is in every other sport.
Thank you.
Well, Jason agrees with that.
Night game on Tuesday night.
Thank you.
People on the East Coast, they watch half the game, they have to go to bed.
How are you going to grow your audience?
Some of us go to bed before it starts.
How are you going to grow your
Besides that, the fans are too stupid to vote. They're too stupid to vote. When I was a kid, and I grew up, the players, coaches, and managers voted. It was one man, one vote. You could not vote for teammates. That was an objective, fair election. This
Mm.
one is like an election in Honduras. You can vote 5 times in one day, every day. It's
Yeah,
absurd.
that I don't
It's
understand.
absurd.
Why do you get to vote multiple times?
Look,
like nobody's ever explained to me what exactly the logic is behind that.
in fairness,
You'll spend more time. You spend more time on your computer involved in baseball. That's the logic.
yeah, they want you to engage more. But in fairness, I used to get a card at the ballpark and I would check off Rico Bronya and every other Philly that didn't deserve to be on the All-Star team because they were a Philly and I thought it would be there. So I don't know that it was ever a perfect process, but Adam Silver was
Never.
Wait,
with the
hold on.
fan
We
vote.
need to stop this right now because Jason, the fact that you voted for Rico Bronya for
I
the
did.
All-Star game
I
is
That's
making
why
Dan's
fans
points
shouldn't
about
vote.
fans being too stupid to vote.
exactly. I should not have been able to vote, but I was. And so I would just vote for every Philly. Not that they deserved to be there, but they were my guys.
Well,
And that's what I think a lot of people do.
Every team is promoting vote for your favorites for the All-Star game.
Right.
Well,
Yes.
I'm a Braves fan. I just got an email yesterday that said, send these guys to Texas. And it showed the 8 Braves starters. And you know, I put a little comment on that. You know what I said? Send these guys to Gwinnett.
Well, I mean, and look, I can.
For people that don't know, that's their AAA team.
So you're a Braves
Really
fan.
wrong the way they're playing.
You're a Braves fan. And I mean, for the Phillies here, the last 2 years, Phillies have been 10 plus games back at this time. It's a reversal this year in terms of the injuries the Braves had and how they have played recently. What is going on with that franchise? Is that a larger problem than the injuries, or is it just the injury bug with them?
One of my problems, one of my issues in baseball in general is long-term contracts. Everybody used to have a 1-year contract. That was a much better way to do it. And on top of that, nobody knew what the other guy was making. If you work in a factory, do you want to know what the guy down the hall is making? And then you can go to the boss and say, well, he's making so much, I'm worth more. That's ridiculous. And that's what baseball has done by exposing everybody's salary. It's made it horrible for everybody in baseball.
I feel like I've found Jeff's spirit animal to do this radio show with here. I mean,
Yes, Dan. What are you doing on Fridays? Jason may have to go.
this
buy
is
something
literally
else.
like he says I'm the younger one, but not by that much. But I have a shorter attention span and came up with a little bit more technology. So he's a little bit more of like, let's leave this the way it is. But I just listening to you, it's so funny because that literally is Jeff's perspective regularly. Why do we have to change this? It's not broken. What's wrong with this?
Well, look, getting back to the All-Star game for a second, I have so many bones to pick with this thing. Reggie Jackson was once elected a starter with a batting average of 199, but that wasn't the worst offense. Davey Lopes was once elected with a batting average of 169. 169, and the Dodger fans stuffed the ballot box and picked him. How about, let's see, Mike Schmidt? He was elected a starter after he retired. I can go on and on.
Sympathy pick.
And
Wait, what's wrong with that?
You should not vote for your favorite players ever. You should vote for the most deserving players. Every team that promotes vote for your favorites is wrong, and it should not be allowed. And if we had a commissioner with a spine, it would not be allowed.
You know, by the way, so that reminds me, the Mike Schmidt thing is awesome. Not because it should happen, but it then reminds me of something that never happens now, which is Old Timers Day.
Right.
As a kid, that was just like, I don't know what made me think of it. It's completely off topic, but I miss Old Timers Day.
I do too. Well, the Braves have an Old Timers Day because they have the 2 oldest pitchers in the National League, and Charlie Morton and Jesse Chavez.
Every day is Old Timers Day. Look, before
Yes.
we let you go, I got to ask you, you're talking about your pitching staff. Phillies pitching staff is doing something that baseball is not doing these days in terms of the amount of innings they're going and how they're pitching. Surprising you what the Phillies are able to do with their pitching staff right now this season?
Not really. The Phillies have really repaired what was a terrible bullpen. They've really fixed it. It's doing much better. The Phillies and Braves both are likely to have 3 starting pitchers each going to the All-Star game. And that's kind of remarkable. Few teams can do that.
Well, look,
and to be an old timer again, they're doing it by pitching more than 6 innings. I mean, the Phillies have almost an not old time pitching staff, but older time pitching staff than the modern pitching staff.
yeah, Dan, we talked to Jamie Moyer about that a few weeks ago about the change in pitching and max effort as opposed to looking to go deep in games and pitch innings and just the change in that. Look, we could talk baseball all day with you. We got to run today, but we'd love to have you back another time. If people are looking for something to do for Father's Day, pick up the book, Home Run King, The Remarkable Records of Hank Aaron. You will not be disappointed. Dan, thanks so much for giving some time to us.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Jeff. And tell Jamie Morey the Braves need a fifth starter.
He could probably still get out there and sling it.
He wants 300.
There you go. Take it easy, Dad.
Thank you.